All right, making something different. I haven't posted videos, anything in a while. I haven't really been playing Magic. I haven't had much fun anytime I do go to play Magic. And I've seen a lot of people talking about Pioneer. People are playtesting for, I believe the Showcase Challenge just happened. Um, there was a cool deck or two in the top eight for sure. But I want to talk about just my thoughts on the format. Since Standard kind of became obviously the VV format, I switched over to Pioneer. I've basically had negative opinions of this format for a really long time, right? Um, I just feel like they decided that the format ended up in a place that they were happy with. I didn't agree that I was happy with the place that the format was in. So I stopped playing Pioneer. Sometimes I would post decks, but I kind of just stopped playing it. And for the past month or two, I've been actually playing Pioneer because I wanted to figure out if I was right or wrong for not enjoying it. Um, and the first thing I want to say is that I still do not really enjoy the gameplay of Pioneer. Um, but I wanted to use that to sort of explain and discuss the format. Hopefully, these things will have more purposes than just me seeming like I'm complaining. But the format's interesting. I want it to succeed. I want it to be successful. I want it to be something people are interested in. I want it to be something that appears at competitive levels, regardless of if I enjoy it or not. So you can tell the cards are sort of segmented. That has meaning. This is also just going to be me kind of ranting. But I want to talk about just some of my thoughts on the cards in Pioneer, the state of the format, and things like that. All right. So one of the first things I want to talk about is, I guess, something I would just describe as like linear gameplay, meaning threats versus answers, what the games look like when the threats aren't answered, what turn the average game ends, and if the decisions within that small span of time feel like they matter. If you feel like you played an interesting game, if it was challenging, those aspects would be what a lot of people define as fun within in the context of the card game. So let's just talk about the top deck. So I've got the Goldfish page up. The first deck is mono red, right? And this is a standard deck that got banned out of standard. Um, you use Hardfire Hero, Monstrous Rage, and Manifold Mouse. So pretty straightforward deck. Everyone is familiar with it. It can kill on turn 3. I think that requires 2 Monstrous Rage, or if your opponent like shocks or something. I don't know. It's gonna be hard to just Goldfish them, but Hardfire Hero into Manifold Mouse plus Monstrous Rage is what? It's 4 damage, and then it's 6 doubled, 12, 16, I think. So I guess if you have a second Monstrous Rage, then it's 20. There's other cards people sometimes play that you can pump your creature with, whether it's Infuriate or the like +2 -2 card. There's a lot of ways to get it done. But it's also just a really effective deck full of good cards. Like, it doesn't need to kill you quickly. It has inevitability, it has burn, it has utility in its mana base. So it's a powerful deck. I'm sure there are some people that enjoy playing the deck and think it is a good power level for Pioneer. Not going to spend too much time talking about it. But that is sort of like a baseline. That's the most popular deck. Current Goldfish page has it at 17.5%. So a large percentage, but it's also just kind of a dead format that Moto grinders play mice in while they're double queuing. So something to keep in mind. I don't really. I've been anti mice for a long time. I think that they're really poorly designed. I think that reflects in the bannings. Um, Maybe they land in a good spot for Pioneer. If you think they land in a good spot for Pioneer, then that we'll get to that when we discuss some of the unbanning stuff. So the next deck we have is Rakdos Midrange, which comes in at 14.5%. So I would describe this deck as largely Thoughtseize, Fabled Mirror Breaker, and Unholy Annex. Like, I think those are the power level outlier cards. I think Thoughtseize is good for the format. I don't think Thoughtseize should ever not be a part of the format. Maybe that's controversial, but I think it does sort of accomplish making the games extended, and making it so the combo decks don't always get to do their Goldfish. I is it more powerful than some of the other cards on the list? I think you could definitely argue that. In regards to Unholy Annex and Fable, I've talked about these cards ad nauseum. Um, but I oftentimes just describe them as 3-mana cruel ultimatums, where you just end up getting so much value from them that it feels like your opponent's discarding a bunch, and you're drawing a bunch, and you just do so many things for 3 mana. They're not creature threats, so they don't die to removal spells. Disenchants aren't particularly effective against them. Unholy Annex drawn on the end step is a big deal for that. So if your opponent uses their mana, you're probably going to get your card back, and then they're going to get 2 for 1. A lot of times you just have to counter these things. So that's part of where they're balanced, right? Is like you can spell pierce, no more lies. They're kind of expensive. In Pioneer, you can just kill your opponent the turn after they resolve one of the things. But Thoughtseize makes it so it's less likely that you just die. So in conjunction, these 3 cards I think are incredibly powerful. A lot of people I think would argue that the only reason that a mid-range deck exists is because of these cards. And maybe that's a good thing. But again, we'll get into more of why or why not. Next is Azorius Control at 11%. I don't even have an Azorius Control card on here. I guess Teferi is over here, but this card is banned. I've never had a problem with blue-white control in Pioneer. I actually think it creates some of the most interesting games. A lot of the decisions, sequencing, timing, what you play around, what you don't play around, forcing your opponent to act on the turn where they need to resolve their card draw spell, how you pressure the board, how you balance things between Verdict and like Teferi, how you play around Wandering Emperor. I enjoy playing against blue-white control. I also think it's like pretty easy to beat it effectively. I think, I don't know. I don't really think I'll ever have an issue with blue-white control in Pioneer. I think there are tools to beat it, so not going to talk about that deck. I'm a fan of it. I very rarely play it myself, but I generally enjoy the games against it. Next is Phoenix. Okay, so Phoenix, it's been around forever. It's just steadily gotten better and better. At some point, we got Consider, and then we got Sleight of Hand, and eventually we got Artisan's Talent, then we got Corey Steelcutter, and the other outlier. I think the 3 cards that stand out to me are Steelcutter, Artisan's Talent, and Treasure Cruise. Artisan's Talent in relation to the way that the deck functions, it just enables everything. It also lets you filter out Treasure Cruises if, you're getting Rest in Peace or Go Blanked or whatever, and Cruise is less effective. So keep that in mind when I talk about expressive iteration, but one of the strongest decks in the format. Treasure Cruise has always been a discussion for bans. Corey Steelcutter, just an incredibly powerful card. Very good at just making your opponent dead. So if your goal is to interact with all of these things, an artifact, an enchantment, then a sorcery that's a draw 3 can be difficult. Another deck in the format where a lot of the problem solving and how you beat it is just combo killing them, because like, what else? You're not going to outgrind them, right? It's not really a thing you can realistically do, and removal doesn't actually address any of the issues. So that is 11%. Next, at 9.1%, Orzhov Greasefang. We have Greasefang over here. The thing is, you discard the Parhelion, Greasefang attack you for what? It's like 13, right? And then you have 8 power worth of Sarah Angels, and your opponent's probably dead. So a deck that ends the game on turn 4. It kind of ends the game on turn 3, right? It's pretty clear once you accomplish the thing that you've won. But dies to removal, dies to Graveyard Hate. There are some vulnerabilities with it, but now we see people playing it alongside Monument to Endurance, which sets up sort of like a Boggles-like board where you have an indestructible creature, and now you have this enchantment that's burning your opponent, giving you a card back, potentially making treasures. It's difficult to deal with regular traditional removal, like the minus effects, like Nowhere to Run, Bile Blight. It's like something Infusion, I think, is the red one. But there are ways to interact with it. So yeah, you see this deck a lot. Another deck that's just a combo deck that kills you on turn 4 in the format, but does have more interaction points. The Monument to Endurance plus the discard outlet part of the deck is pretty good against the Graveyard Hate. Obviously, it gives you a sideboard pivot, so it lets you sort of mash 2 combos together. I've described this deck as like a Boggles and Splinter Twin deck before. So yeah, powerful deck at 9%. And then we'll just go through the top 10, I guess. Next is Mono Black Midrange. I've addressed this. It's the same thing. It's just red-black with a mana base that is better, which is nice for the fact that you have to play Mutavault with Annex. It makes you better against Sunspine Links, which is a really powerful card in the format. And overall, your mana base is just better, which is good for consistency for all decks. Not too much to say. Thoughtseize on Holy Annex are the standouts. Fatal Push is supporting cast. Not going to give too much credit to Gifted Aetherborn. Trespasser, also a relatively strong card, even though some people like to laugh at it. Next is Gruul Prowess. Similar to the Mouse deck, I don't think people play Heartfire Hero in the context of the Gruul Prowess deck. It's Corey Steelcutter and Questing Druid. I honestly don't have super strong opinions of this deck. It's 5%, so it's not super popular. I assume that this is just the red players' reaction to a lot of people switching over to Fatal Push decks. You know, let me just open the list to make sure. I don't think it plays Heartfire Hero. Yeah, so it's just Emberheart Challenger, Swift Spear, Soulscar Mage, Questing Druid, and then a bunch of spells. So just a prowess deck with Corey Steelcutter. And I think it's just a deck designed to be better against the card Fatal Push. So that's 5%. No qualms for me. Kamana faces Kagazan, obviously a very powerful card. Of course, Steelcutter, obviously a very powerful card. I don't really take too much issue with the cards in this deck, so I don't think you'll just see maybe Screaming Nemesis on the list that's in the sideboard. But yeah, it seems like more people prefer the mono red version, which is not too much of a surprise. Now we have Mardu Greasefang, 3%. It's kind of like Rakdos midrange with Greasefang in it. You have Blood Tithe Harvester, Thoughtseize, play Vanishing Verse, Fatal Push. There's a lot of different ways to build the Mardu deck, but it's a similar thing where you're just trying to win the game on turn 3 by sort of setting up if you're missing out Parhelion, Greasefang. 5-color Legends, new combo deck. Relic of Legends is over here. You just use this to tap creatures, untap or replay creatures, bounce things, get Rona triggers, draw your deck, win whichever way. There's a lot of different things going on with the deck. There's like Rutstein. I think you can do loops, all sorts of different things. But just another combo deck trying to kill you on turn 4. Has a plan B of just being like a Mox Amber beatdown humans deck. But again, turn 4 kills. Will be something that will be recurring across all these decks. I don't think there will be a single non-Thoughtseize deck. I guess maybe Phoenix, Blue-White Control. Those are the decks that can't really kill on turn 4. And the next one we'll talk about, it probably can't kill on turn 4. It's probably very difficult, but it's Golgari Food. So Scavenger Talent is one of the outliers, I would say, in terms of power level. The combo is Igra makes everything a food. Cauldron Familiar, you sack a Cauldron Familiar that is now a food to get back a different Cauldron Familiar, and then you loop them to gain infinite life and deal infinite damage. Scavenger Talent enables all that. By the second mode, saying when you sacrifice a permanent, target player mills 2. You're always going to mill yourself. And then level 3, you get to get back a permanent, so you can get back the Igra in combo. So in terms of gameplay experience, a lot of this is I play Scavenger Talent, I activate it. I activate Witch's Oven, I block, and then I Igra combo you. So, not exactly like negative gameplay from the way the other decks are. But again, it's not a particularly fun play pattern or gameplay experience. I think this deck just won a challenge. It's a smaller percent. It's only 2%, but I'm just gonna go over the top 10 decks, and this one eked out. I guess I'll give a shout out to the Simic Scapeshift deck, another deck that can pretty straightforwardly kill people on turn 4. Just pull out Lumra. See Lotus Field over by Beseiju. These are the cards I think I'll spend time talking about. But the way this deck works is there's a land that just gets a creature back from your graveyard. So you end up looping Lumra. And then you just deck your opponent. You can get Thassa's Oracle. I don't fully know the ins and outs. You can look up the deck. But it's just another Lotus Field combo deck. It does it in a different way. It's pretty similar to Amulet Titan. Spelunking is one of the key pieces where you Spelunking, use your Lotus Fields, make a bunch of mana, sack your board. Your Lumber dies to the fact that there's no lands in play. It resolves. You get all the lands back. You do the thing again. You use your Lotus Field. You sack your lands. You Lumber again. You mill your deck. And then, like I said, you can get Thassa's Oracle or whatever. So just another combo deck. Goal is to play you can play a Grazer, I guess, into a Spelunking. I don't know how many lands you need. Maybe you can kill on turn 3 if you have Grazer Spelunking. Lumra, you probably can. But I think most of the time you're probably killing on turn 4. So, again, just another Another combo deck in Pioneer, kind of par for the course, but that will have to do with the other stuff I want to talk about. So, I guess really quickly, I just lied, but it's fine because this is the rest of the decks. Decks I want to mention are Boar's Hammer. It's a deck that can kill on turn 3, potentially. Most of the time, it's going to require 2 hammers. And then there's Boros Convoke, which is another deck that can kill on turn 3 if you have Gleeful Demolition into Convoke thing plus like Imidane's Recruiter or whatever. I'm not sure if those decks even play Imidane Recruiter anymore, so maybe that's a lie. But similar to Greasefang, it's a deck that's pretty good at just establishing a board on turn 2 where your opponent knows that the game's over and there's not really a reason to play anymore. So, yep. So that sort of sets the setting about what decks exist in the Pioneer meta. And maybe that will make the rest of my thoughts make a little bit more sense. Okay, so I want to talk about, I guess, just the ban list as a whole. I'm not exactly here to say what should be banned, what shouldn't be banned. But there are some things about the list that I kind of find confusing. When approaching ban philosophy, I think a lot of Wizards approaches like if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Where like if the meta is good or not bad or whatever, we're not going to mess with it. We're not going to affect people's collections. In the case of Pioneer, it's kind of in a weird spot where like the cards aren't that expensive. It's not really competitive events. So I think that you could experiment with the format as a whole. But it is also a format that's been around a while. Like there's some people that play paper that have accumulated cards. But I don't know if it would be the biggest issue if they mess around with the ban list. But the first grouping of cards I want to go over is the cards on the left. I would describe these as cards that I don't think should ever be unbanned. So these are the cards that I'm like very confident shouldn't be unbanned. And these are the ones where like maybe if you really wanted them to exist, they could. So the first one I want to talk about is Once Upon a Time. It's just a 0 mana cantrip. A lot of times this is just good at enabling whatever broken combo you were trying to do. Like you could imagine it in a deck like Amalia. When this card was legal, I remember playing it with Sorin. I was playing a deck that was trying to assemble Sorin combo with whatever the hell vampire you were playing. Then I guess Champion of Dusk. So it helped you have your elf on turn 1. I had Oath and Nissa to help me find Sorin, but it helped you just consistently have the big vampire or the elf. So yeah, it's just a terrible design. I kind of think that this was maybe designed in an era where they were like, we need best of 1 to work. And having bad hands in best of 1 isn't fun. So we're going to experiment with something that helps hands be better. But all the cards designed in this era were just like kind of miserable. So I don't think Once Upon I think it's a design mistake. I don't think that this should exist and be a part of gameplay. Make people spend mana for their cantrips. Maybe people will argue against this. It's maybe not the most offensive card on this list, but I don't want to see this one back. Balustrade Spy and Undercity Informer are just oops all spell decks. So you just play one of these, you mill your deck, and then hopefully you establish a board where you've just won the game. I don't even know if these are necessarily too powerful for Pioneer. But a lot of times these are just being played on turn 3. And resulting in you winning the game. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I think it was just like you would play a World Spineworm, so you wouldn't deck out, and then you would mill your deck, and you'd trigger a bunch of Narc Amoeba, Prize Amalgam, Creeping Chill type things. And then your mana base has to be all flip, the flip lands or whatever, similar to how Belcher is. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe one day these could be legal. Maybe they're already fine, but the gameplay experience behind these is just fucking terrible. I have no interest in these being a part of Games of Pioneer. So if you wanted to put them over here, you could. Underworld Breach, just another combo card. So I think Chronic Flooding is maybe the way that people would use it in this format. On turn 4, after you Chronic Flooding, your land gets whenever it becomes tapped to mill 3. So you can play the Breach, and then if you have Hidden Strings, you can keep milling yourself, keep casting Hidden Strings, or just, is it Stirring? Hiding? Whoops. This combo will let you mill yourself, and then eventually you'll find, is it Stirrings or Strings? I'm ruining the video. I'm sorry. The 2 mana card that untaps 2 lands. I don't know what it's called. It's the Lotus Field card. So yeah. This is on your land. Your land mills 3. This untaps your land. You tap your land for 3. You exile 3 cards. You keep replaying this. You mill your deck. You find Thassa's Oracle. You play Thassa's Oracle off Breach, and you win. So this was a card where I was like, maybe this one's not too good, but someone mentioned a while ago that that's how that would work. So I that's probably a really powerful way to just win the game. You have to have a 3-card combo, sort of, but this mills you. You get an opportunity to mill 6. You can just have the string. So yeah, this does not seem like something that should be available in the format. So that's why those are there. So yeah, again, just another relatively powerful combo deck where you can do Lotus Field stuff too, obviously, with this. I think that's the initial way that people used it, but this is just a terrible design from an era where I think they were designing a bunch of things that maybe they shouldn't have. This card is just a Yawgmoth's Will, right? The intention behind it is to just use it to combo. Jugantha, I shouldn't have to explain this, but I guess I will. It's not exactly because of its power level. It's because of what it does to players and to deck building. It sort of just makes the game worse. Like, it sort of makes deck building less interesting. It kind of just does this thing that where it's powerful, but it's not intuitively powerful because it's powerful like a Celestial Colonnade is powerful, right? Like Celestial, like tapped blue-white land isn't insane. Spending a bunch of mana to get a 4/4 flyer every turn isn't that insane. But it's just kind of free. Like it's just a really powerful card because it's just stats at a low cost. Did it ever need to be banned? It probably didn't need to be banned, but it never should have been made. I think you can make this argument for a lot of companions. Once this thing is on the ban list, I hope that it never comes off. It's just a stupid card that makes deck building less interesting. Every time a spoiler comes out, you just evaluate less cards because you know that your deck plays Jugantha, so you can't play that one. This card is just an abomination. Lurrus is a power level thing. Companion is just a terrible mechanic. But this card is ridiculously powerful. Maybe this could be over here just because people love Lurrus. Like, it is a... If Lurrus wasn't a companion, this card would be awesome. If this card was legal, I don't even know if I would care. But I'm also, like, I wouldn't consider myself a Pioneer player at this point. So, I think this one's probably on the never unban list. And I think maybe more so than any other thing on the never unban list is Flooded Strand. I think I like the fact that there are no fetch lands in the format that affects the way other things work. I think this is important. I also think just shuffling your deck all the time isn't particularly good. And I think it's nice to have a separation between Pioneer and Modern, regardless of power level. So finally, there's Veil of Summer, which... similar to Besaidu, actually, it's just a card that's very good in broken decks. If everyone was just using Veil of Summer in like fair decks to 2-for-1 people, maybe you could argue it's okay. But at the end of the day, like, you shouldn't print 1-mana Cryptic Command, even if it's a sideboard card or it's contextual. This card's just defensive. I don't want to see it be legal. If it was legal, it would probably, like I said, it's just gonna go in combo decks that don't want to get thought seized and don't want people to break up their whatever creature combo. But maybe it could be legal. It's part of why it's on this side. Field of the Dead, kind of like Lotus Field, where you just end up with these decks that are just non-interactive linear piles. This one's a bit different. Like, you could play Field of the Dead in blue-black control, for example. You could play it in ramp decks where you're just putting a bunch of field deads in play. You could play it in blue-white control. You could just build your mana base all sort of different ways. Splendid Reclamation, there's the new creature that does this. It just doesn't make particularly fun games of Magic. There's cards like Declaration in Stone, Bile Blight, Detention Sphere. There are ways to try to compensate for this. If this card was legal in the current format, I don't know if it would be the best deck or good or matter. It's probably something that would just end up in the Scapeshift decks, I guess. But, like, those decks aren't exactly functioning to do something like this. It's kind of awkward with Lotus Field. But I think you would just play one, and there would be certain game states where you just get it and win. So, I don't know. Maybe this one could be legal. Not a very fun card. The 2020 era, I think it's the same set as Lotus Field. This one probably shouldn't be legal. Geological Appraiser, 1-card combo. I hate Quintorius. I think Quintorius should have got banned too. I don't really care about power level. This card could probably be legal. It just gets bricked by like removal spell shock. But you know, you're just channeling whatever the hell to make a treasure. And then you're playing this and then cloning it a bunch of times and then giving all the copies haste and just killing your opponent. So really unfun gameplay. Not that detached from how some of the gameplay in Pioneer already is. But 1-card combos are just really, really miserable. If you make a card game and you have 1-card combos in your deck, you're probably doing a very bad job. Or in your decks. Okay, so these are cards that I think that these should just probably stay banned forever. I don't know. Maybe these 3 you could consider if you just gave up and wanted people to play broken cards all the time. At least Luris is fun. Gigantha's not fun, but yeah. Flooded Strands is like 100%. All these other ones, I'm like 95 to 99%. And then these ones, I don't know, 90, something like that. So next up, we have cards that I think could maybe get unbanned. That's what we'll say this pile is. So I'm not too confident about any of these things. Like, I'm mostly just expressing my opinions. In the past, I spent a lot of time thinking about these things, but I kind of just built up apathy and stopped caring. But I figure I could throw together a YouTube video, so here we are. So these are cards. Basically, everything past this line, I think, is like kind of miserable. There's a mix of different thoughts. Even these cards, I think, are kind of offensive. But let's talk about the 3 over here, where like these are the ones where like I'm not 100%. So the first one is Teferi. So from a power level perspective, this one is probably fine. It's just really not fun. It kind of breaks the rules of Magic. It kind of feels like a Luris or a Gigantha or a Once Upon a Time. Like Planeswalkers with these passives like Narset and Karn, where they just cut off your opponent's ability to do things. Like, they don't even design Planeswalkers with passives like this anymore because they realized how bad of designs they were. Again, 2020 era design. But all that in mind, would this card be too good in Pioneer? I don't think so. It does sort of play into the, like, everybody's just doing combos all the time thing by turning off your opponent's ability to interact. Maybe if Kethis and this were legal, that would be super miserable. But at the end of the day, you're still going to be... Like, people can still interact with the graveyard. So this card just sucks. It's miserable. But in the context of people playing Corey Steelcutter, in the context of people playing Heartfire Hero, in the context of people playing whatever other cards that could get banned alongside these, is Teferi unacceptable? Is it too good? Is it less fun than getting Lotus Field comboed? Probably not. This card could probably get unbanned. Next we have Winota. The card I want to talk about first is Reckless Rage, which is like a really powerful card in the context of the red decks. It's just 1 mana, deal 2 to your thing, 4 to your opponents. Answer is Winota. I don't know if that was a card that saw a ton of play when Winota was initially legal. There was a lot of other things that have been printed to make Winota better. Non-creatures, creatures. It has the Birthing Pot effect, where you always have to keep in mind the things being printed. Cavern of Souls to make it uncounterable. This card is miserable. I really, like, most of these cards on these piles, I just think are miserable Magic cards. But in the context of what Pioneer currently is, I want to ask the question, are these cards unacceptable? Should they stay banned? Is there any window or opportunity for these things to be legal for the people that want to play with them, assuming that they accept the Pioneer gameplay that they bring, that it's an acceptable power level and maybe similar to the things that already exist? I think that you can make the argument that Winota is acceptable, where, you know, there's Go for the Throats, there's Revolted Fatal Push when you sack your Fable Treasure or your Blood Token or whatever. It makes really bad gameplay, but it incentivizes people to play with creatures at least. It's kind of like Greasefang, right? Like, sometimes you play a Winota on turn 3, attack, put a Grave Titan into play. Do I think this thing needs to be banned? Maybe not. But yeah, these 3 are sort of the less confidence. Next one I want to talk about is Sorn. So Sorn Vein Ripper is the obvious combo. Any sort of black combo deck in quotes here, is going to be more powerful because it gets access to Thoughtseize, Um, but one thing I think is a little bit interesting about Sorin is when Sorin was banned, Unholy Annex didn't exist. So I don't know. I'm not confident in saying that Unholy Annex is worth playing in the context of Sorin Vein Ripper when those things are available alongside Thoughtseize and Fable. But I do think you can kind of ask yourself the question, is that something I should do? The other problem with Sorin is maybe you just don't play Fable anymore. Like, Fable is nice because it filters out extra Sorins. If you draw 3 Sorins, you can loot away 2. If you draw 3 Vein Rippers, you can loot away 1. You can use the Fable to make treasures. And obviously Blood Tithe Harvesters. So I think you're incentivized to be red if you're playing Sorin anyway. But Unholy Annex also pairs really well with Mutavault, which pairs well with Sorin. So maybe there could be a mono black version. In the context of everything else going around on the format, do I think that Sorin is just miles ahead of what everyone else is doing? Maybe. It's part of why it's on this uncertainty list. But I think Sorin is something that you could consider depending on what your goals are for the format. So these are the uncertain ones. Next are the less uncertain, but still uncertain ones. So the first one's Nexus Fate. This card is just ugly and only foil or something. It's not fun. There's Mind Splice Apparatus, which is something where if you get this going alongside Nexus, you probably just win the game. Is that unacceptable? Is that too good? I don't think so. I don't really care. I mean, people are just going to kill me with Monstrous Rage while I cast my stupid nonsense blue cards. I'm going to draw 7 drops instead of Fatal Pushes. Do I think this card is fun? Do I think any of these cards are fun? Not really. Do I think this card needs to be banned? No. Next, we can go to Wilderness Reclamation. So these were kind of banned at the same time. So I've got to recall things using my tiny brain, but I've spent enough time thinking about Pioneer that hopefully I can remember most of them. But in terms of like interacting with Wilderness Reclamation, there's like Vanishing Verse. There's just all sort of like disenchant effects that have been printed. I think it's a little bit easier to deal with this at instant speed than maybe it was before. I'm not doing a very good job of giving examples, so maybe it's not a ton. But there are some better interactive spells that have been printed. In terms of like its effect on like how potent Wilderness Reclamation decks will be in the format, it can be awkward against Thoughtseize, right? Like if you have a hand with 2 Wilderness Reclamations, your opponent can potentially just take your card draw. If you have clunky card draw because your Wilderness Reclamations, they can just take that. Obviously there are counter spells in the format. There's no more lies that's been printed. It's a sorcery speed card. Does Wilderness Reclamation make fun, interesting games of Magic? No. Do any of these cards really do that? I don't think so, not really. Do I think that this card needs to be banned at this point in Pioneer in the context of Rakdos, Phoenix, Mice, combo decks, all that stuff? Nah, it just kind of seems in line with everything else. It just seems like another sort of combo deck, linear, non-interactive, do my bullshit, untap my lands, Lotus Field-esque thing. It is different. Like, you get to play permission, counter spells. There's a lot of really strong cards. It's especially strong with Memory Deluge. There's Consult the Star Charts. There's a lot of ways that this thing could be powerful and go wrong. But I think there are enough punishes in the format that maybe would be acceptable. I could be wrong. I could be wrong about all this, but we're making a YouTube video here. And do I truly think that Wilderness Reclamation is, like, unacceptable? No, I think it could probably be legal. I don't think it sees any play in Modern. Modern is a whole different ballgame than Pioneer, but it kind of just seems like another bullshit deck in a format full of bullshit decks. So, it is what it is. Next up, we have Leyline of Abundance. I want to talk about that in comparison with Leyline of the Guild Pack. This gives you 4 Devotion. This gives you 2 Devotion. This lets your Land or Wealth tap for an additional mana. This lets all your mana sources tap for additional mana. So you can play Sylvan Caryatid over something like Wolf Willowhaven, I think is the name of it. Leylines suck. Leylines, I think, are just miserable. I think proactive Leylines are just not good design space. I don't know why the hell they made the red Leyline. But like, is this more offensive than the red Leyline? Does this do something in terms of a gameplay experience that Mono Green doesn't already have to offer? A lot of the games with Mono Green are like, they go first, they play elf, you can't kill it, the game ends, you just die, right? Like, they just Kiora you, and then they just like draw their deck on turn 4. They just nick those a bunch of times. Do I think that this is unacceptable for the power level of Pioneer, where you're getting thought seized a lot of the time, or people are just trying to goldfish you on turn 4 anyway? Not really. Again, just another miserable card that I don't think needs to be banned. I think this one probably could have gotten unbanned a while ago. And I think there are draws where you'd rather just have Leyline. Where this ends up, like if you just have one elf, for example, this ends up giving you +1. If you have a Nykthos and one elf, this ends up giving you +2 because of the double pips instead of the mana. So, yeah, I just don't care. I don't know. Let people do this. It seems like this is the type of thing you want in the format. If you're gonna let people just hardfire Hero Mandible Mouse, let people Leyline. Whatever. Who gives a shit? Walking Ballista. This one's kind of complicated. So I think this card could be legal. I've always thought the Heliod deck kind of sucked. Clunky, full of mid cards. A combo that was easy to interact with. I never thought the Heliod combo was particularly good in Pioneer, even during like inverter format, things like that. But the format's different. There's a lot of different things you can do. Agatha's Soul Cauldron obviously combines with all sorts of different things. Maybe there's hardened scale stuff. There's different ways to use Walking Ballista. I've built various artifact decks. Tezzeret can tutor it. But yeah, the one most people are going to talk about is the Heliod combo. This combo is what? You have to have the Heliod in play, and then you like play the Ballista, and then or it has to have 2 counters, so you have to get the second counter, and then you have to get it to have lifelink by spending 2 mana to do that. It's just clunky. I guess you go turn 2 Ballista, turn 3 Heliod, turn 4... I don't even remember how it works. Whatever. This shit just seems mid. Is Walking Ballista a fun card? Is it fun having Ballista blow up your board? Getting Mayhem Deviled on an artifact with hardened scales and all that stuff? Not really, but does that seem out of line with the rest of the stuff going on in Pioneer? No. I don't know. It's fine. Like, if people want to figure out how to Agatha's Soul Cauldron combo, if people want to try to play hardened scales when that's not really something that shows up in Modern anymore, if people want to play Heliod combo compared to the other combo decks that are present in the format, is that unacceptable? I don't think so. I think this card could probably easily be legal. Is it going to make the most interesting, most fun games of Magic? No. But does it seem off pace with the rest of the things going on in the format? I don't think so. Okay, Felidar Guardian. This one combos with Saheeli Rai, which is legal in the format. You just blink Saheeli, and then Saheeli copies this, gives it haste, and then you repeat the process until you have infinite Felidar Guardians. So, there's a lot we can talk about with Felidar Guardian. Our turn 4 combo is fun. This is a straightforward 2-card combo, right? You don't need to do any spelunking plus having whatever mana base. It's pretty simple. You can just have a mana base that includes Jeskai lands, and then these 2 cards, and you combo. One thing that I'll note about it is if there's like a Walking Ballista or a Spikefield Hazard, eventually the Sealy has to go to 1 toughness, and then you could break up the combo. So just burn spells in general will stop it every single time. Removal spell deals with Felidar Guardian. The combo ends there. Independent of each other, these cards are kind of strong because this can blink cards like Oath of Nissa, Omen of the Sea, any sort of ETB card you might include in a Yorion deck. And then Sealy's the same thing where like you can copy artifacts, you can scry, it's a planeswalker. So unlike something like Splinter Twin, where Splinter Twin doesn't ever really do anything, both of these cards have value independent of comboing with each other, which is part of what would make a deck like this so strong. The next things I want to talk about is just like 3-color decks in Pioneer, right? So there's a cost because your mana bases don't have fetch lands. So there's an obvious cost to building a mana base for a Jeskai deck that's a 3-color deck or even more colors or whatever. The next thing I want to talk about is like one of the ways to punish that is Sunspine Links, right? So you have these red decks with Sunspine Links. You have these red decks full of burn spells. You have Phoenix, which typically plays Fire Impulse, which does not stop this combo, but they can have access to other red burn spells. Both of these cards are sorcery speed, so decks with counter spells, No More Lies, going to be able to interact with this. You can Needle the Planeswalker. Um, so yeah, there's a lot of different interaction points. And the other thing, the final thing I want to say is like, if you're gonna play Yorion with these cards, I don't think that's unreasonable, assuming that Yorion is legal with these cards at the same time in this hypothetical. But I do think Feldar Guardian is a fun card to play with when you are not comboing, and I do think Saheeli Rai is also a very fun card to play with when you're not comboing. I also I'm not sure if I'm convinced that the combo is like too powerful for what exists in Pioneer, right? Like something, for example, like Inverter of Truths. When you inverter combo someone, it doesn't really matter if they just have a bunch of burn spells and removal spells, because you're just going to Thassa's Oracle, it's going to go on the stack, and your opponent's going to lose. In the case of these two, you can just interact with the board and have a burn spell or whatever, and hopefully not die. So I think that these are things that should definitely be considered and maybe be legal in the format. I'm not sure how scared they are of them. I remember when Pioneer came out and this combo existed. It was annoying, but I didn't feel too strongly that it was like powerful to a degree where like I couldn't believe it. And I think it's something that maybe you could reconsider having be a part of the format in the context of everything else. It dodges Graveyard Hate, right? Like Grease Fang. A lot of these other like more powerful combos, like Winota, not really a combo, but basically a combo, get to dodge Graveyard Hate. Inverters sort of can, where like you can just Inverter Oracle when your opponent has a Rest in Peace and they die. Kethis is also just a 3/4 that makes your cards cheaper, so you can just beat them down. Uro gives you the card back. Amalia doesn't need the graveyard, but can be stopped by Graveyard Hate. The better combo decks are typically going to be able to function through Graveyard Hate, which is part of why Grease Fang is, I think, more acceptable than some of these things, but it is potentially faster, and it does have some other benefits. So do I think Saheeli Feldar Guardian should be considered? Yeah, I do think so. It's a complicated one. There's so many things to talk about. There's probably a bunch of things that I didn't address. You can yap at me in the comments. Let's move on. Expressive Iteration. Okay, so I really wanted Expressive Iteration to get banned before it got banned. I was pretty vocal about that. It ended up getting banned. I was really happy. And part of why that was because a lot of the gameplay against Phoenix, what would end up happening was you would have to have Rest in Peace or Go Blank or whatever, to be able to interact with the Treasure Cruises, because if you're also playing a fair deck, you can't just let your opponent resolve Treasure Cruises. You won't win games of Magic. But Iteration did a really good job of letting your opponent play the game through the hate pieces. So, like, okay, you turned off a card in my hand for your card in play, but I have 2 mana draw 2. This is going to give me land drops, and even to the point where you would find more iterations, and sometimes you would just find 8 lands and then play Treasure Cruise. The iteration to help you hit your land drops, help you hit more iterations, and then just help you play the game and interact with the board and threaten your opponent. At the current point in time, with the context of what the Phoenix decks have to offer, with specifically Artisan's talent, which is part of why I talked about that earlier, I don't think these things really matter anymore. If you think about the way that a Phoenix deck is constructed, do I think it will play Expressive Iteration? Yes. Do I think that it will play 4? I'm not 100% sure. Maybe there will always be 4 in the 75. Maybe it'll be a really effective sideboard card. But in the context of Fable the Mirror Breaker, Treasure Cruise, Unholy Annex, Stock Up, a lot of these powerful cards in the format dig through time, do I think Iteration needs to remain banned? I don't think so. So one of the decks that I think it will be especially powerful in will be alongside Vivi. Whether it's the Prowess decks, and maybe you could play this in like a Vivi Cauldron deck. But Cruise can be really awkward in those decks, because sometimes you're just not getting spells in the yard as quickly. Maybe you're playing Storm Chaser's talent, or you just have like Dreadhorde Arcanist eating your graveyard. I think Iteration will be powerful in the context of those decks. Obviously, you just have a blue-red card in a deck with Vivi, so you just get to cast off the mana that it's making, and then it's making your VV bigger and helping to make more mana. Will it be too good in the context of those decks? Maybe. But I think this is a card to consider, and I think that it's maybe just sort of in line with the rest of the stuff going on. So yeah. Next up, oh boy, I know this card, Inverter of Truths. So 4 mana 6/6 enters. Your graveyard becomes your deck. Your deck gets exiled. So we're using this to get rid of our deck and then play Thassa's Oracle or Jace and then win the game. So this card specifically powerful with Dig Through Time, where you get to play Thoughtseize, Fatal Push, cast Dig Through Time. Your graveyard is now gone. You play your Inverter of Truths. Your deck becomes 1 Dig Through Time, and then you can draw, play your Thassa's Oracle, and win the game. So I mentioned it before with Sorin. This deck gets to play Thoughtseize. It can win the game on turn 5, not really turn 4. Also, you just get to play games of Magic where you play a 6/6, and your deck becomes, your graveyard becomes your deck, and then you just try to win. If you have 2 inverters, then you can sort of juggle them. Your opponent has to answer the 6/6 that's killing them. You play a new inverter. Now your deck becomes that other inverter. Then your opponent has to answer the other 6/6 you have. Then you play your new inverter. Then your deck becomes that other inverter, and so on and so forth. So, really interesting card to play with. Made some really fun games. Super complicated lines where you had to play around counter spells, discard spells. I think one of the coolest decks in Pioneer. I have no bias. I had nothing to do with the creation of it. Wink, wink. But do I think this needs to be legal or needs to be banned in the context of current Pioneer? No. I can't say that with the most confidence, but like, I think it's probably okay. Right? Like, do I think Dig Through Time, Inverter, Stock Up, Thoughtseize, like, Thassa's Oracle, Jace, do I think that stuff is going to be out of line compared to Thoughtseize, Fatal Push, Unholy Annex, compared to Hardfire Hero, Monsters, Rage Manifold Mouse, compared to Treasure Cruise, Corey Steelcutter, Artisan's Talent. A lot of these decks can play more discard, can play counter spells. There was like nonsense like New Rivulet, where you could just deck your opponent if they inverted at the wrong time. It's not too fast. Yes, it gets Thoughtseize. In the context of this like hypothetical super Pioneer where all these things are unbanned, I don't think it would be too good. I would be willing to experiment with it. So we're talking about unbans here. It's unbanned. Next up, Kethis. Oh, I've always just hated this shit. I've always hated it so much. Just button clicking and untapping, and it's just Lotus Field, right? Like, a lot of these things, they're just Lotus Field. There's multiple Lotus Field decks now. It's just button clicking. It's just the waiting room. Shout out Fugazi. Yeah, I don't know. Like, who cares? Like, is this shit busted? Maybe. Fuck Beseiju. Fuck out of War 2. But, like, does this matter? Is this more powerful than just Parhelion greasefanging people to death? Yes, you play your Emery, you mill your cards, you start legend ruling, you deck yourself, you make mana, Mox Ambers, play your graveyard, win the game, deck your opponent, Jace, whatever. All that bullshit. This deck has only gotten better. It will only get better. They print a lot of legends. It doesn't really do anything in Modern. Do I think this will be too good in Pioneer? No. I really don't. So that's why it's on this side of the room. Amalia. Okay, so this one's maybe more a fresher wound. I don't really remember when this was banned, but I don't think I was playing much Pioneer. Anyway, so this combos with Wildgrowth Walker. You need a way to gain life, and then you get to explore, and then Wildgrowth Walker gains life and gets bigger, and then you repeat exploring. You can mill your deck until you find something that will just reanimate all your combo pieces. You blow up the board. You have a 20 power thing that will one-shot them. They wrath you or whatever, answer it. You play your thing that reanimates everything. You do it again. So, yeah. Just turn 3 kills. If you had Life Gainer into Amalia, into Wildgrowth Walker or whatever. Play like Return to the Ranks. Get back all your 2-drops. Some people played it with Collect Company. Do I think, in the context of all the shit going on, this is too good? I don't think so. I don't know. I could be wrong. There's probably a lot of these where people are going to be like, you don't know shit about shit, and that's fine. This is too many cards for me to not be wrong a lot. It's just more unfun shit. In an unfun shit format, I don't really care. Yes, you just have to answer all their things. You have to blow up their board. You have to interact with their stuff. We have Screaming Nemesis now. Does that even stop this? Yeah, okay. Your opponent can't gain life. Sunspine Links, your opponent can't gain life. Phoenix deck's pretty good at answering small things. Like I said, I didn't really play when this deck was popular. I know a lot of people hate it. I get how it feels like it invalidates like fair creature decks. But all this shit seems like it does that. And a lot of the things that are currently present in the format seem like they do that. Like I don't know. Build me a better aggro deck than mice. I don't know. I don't know if people can convince me that they successfully did that. Do I think this needs to be banned? No, not really. Okay. Next one, I'm gonna say this controversially, is a card that I think this is one that I think they could just unban tomorrow, and I would be like, yeah, this makes sense. That's Uro, Titan of Nature's Wrath. I do not like this card. It won't even let me hover it. I think most people know what it does. Come into play, game 3, draw a card. You can put a land into play. So one of the first things that comes to mind when I think about this is just like it being a pivot for combo decks. So I don't know, if people Necromentia your Lumra deck, maybe if you just have Uro in your side deck or your main deck of your Lotus Field deck, you can just do that. You can just play Uro and attack your opponent. It's also just a way to ramp and get lands into play, set up Lotus Field, all that stuff. But there are, similar to Wilderness Reclamation, and I didn't do a very good job of convincing, I think, that it was okay, but I still think that a lot of answers have obviously been printed over the years. So Uro has, there's Graveyard Trespasser, which I don't think they were ever legal at the same time. That's a big one. It's really good at catching things like Kroxa and Uro. And then No More Lies is another really big one, where it's a pretty clean answer to Uro, where you just No More Lies it, and it's gone, and it's done. Easier said than done, right? Like, you have to have the interactive card. But in terms of how a lot of these decks function, and just Uro being a part of the games, the fact that Screaming Nemesis, Sunspine Link exists, the fact that you can just die on turn 3, a lot of times you're just going to die on turn 4. I don't think that I really have an issue with Uro. I think if you compare Uro to Unholy Annex, I think you could easily make an argument that Unholy Annex is just a more powerful card. They're both gaining life. They're both drawing cards. One you don't really have to spend all that much mana on. You can just cast a demon. Maybe you're spending the 5 mana to make the demon. Maybe you have a Mutavault and you're spending 1 mana. But I think in a lot of ways, as crazy as it is to say, Uro ends up being easier to interact with than Unholy Annex. And yeah, there are decks that can be self-mill decks that can set up Uro and things like that, but I'm not that concerned with it. Again, Sunspine Links checks the life gain, but it also checks, like, if you're playing Sultai, you can't play that many basics. The Lynx is going to just obliterate you. And then, yeah, Nemesis Reckless Rage. You ping your Nemesis or whatever, you shock it. Now they're not getting the life gain. Blocking a 6/6. Nemesis blocking this, being blocked by a 6/6 is just not going to be that big of a deal. I don't think this card needs to be banned. Like, there's some cool things you can do. Like, maybe you play it alongside Quantum Riddler and Essence Flux. And you play your Uro, and you put your land into play before the sack trigger, and then you Essence Flux, and you do it again, and you get more mana. But in the context of the things going on in current Pioneer and potential more unbans Pioneer, I just don't really care about Uro. And then there's Karn. I mean, fuck this card, but, like, who cares? I don't think this card ever needed to get banned. It's just miserable, man. It just sucks. It's just not a fun card. Getting the 2 to your sideboard sucks. Getting randomly null-rotted sucks. This just randomly blowing up your artifact token sucks. It's just such a bad design from an era of so many bad designs. But, like, who cares, man? What do you want me to say? Genuinely, like, if someone Hardfire Heroes me and I have a Karn, I'm just like, I lost the game. I'm a stupid idiot who put Karn in my deck, and now I'm dead. I'm gonna block my green creature. They're gonna, like, Monstrous Rage or whatever, and I'm gonna lose. This card sucks. It's miserable. I really just don't buy that it's of a power level where it needs to be banned. If your goal is to make Pioneer less miserable, which I don't know if that will ever be the goal again, which is part of why I'm making this video, I don't think this needs to be banned. But talking about less miserable, we're going to pivot. We're going to stop talking about unbans. We're going to talk about bans. Kind of. Not really. Sort of. This video's nothing. You've been tricked. If you're still watching it, you've been duped. But yeah, so these are cards where I kind of consider these of a similar power level to these other ones that are banned. Maybe less combo-y stuff. But let's get into it. So Lotus Field, obviously, We're tapping this, we're untapping this, we're tapping this, we're untapping this. You're waiting. You got up, you made cereal, you ate the whole bowl of cereal. I'm still tapping this and untapping this. This card's fucking miserable. Just like ban this card and reprint it without hexproof. Like, give more punishes. This shit sucks. These decks have Into the Flood Maw, they have Besage. It's very difficult to actually stop them from doing the thing they're doing. One of the ways to be effective in stopping them is just by instantly killing them by playing a deck with a red ley line and Hardfire Hero, or just doing whatever you can to insta-kill them because maybe they don't have the right interaction. This card's fucking miserable. It's always been miserable. It's not a secret. Some people like it. Some people like Amulet Titan. Most people don't like the gameplay that it presents. It's very linear, difficult to interact with. Plays a bunch of lands. Has all the answers. Just, not what most people consider traditional Magic, which I think is why people gravitate towards it and like it. They like the weird, different things. They like how it's novel. I don't know what it is. Whatever. I'm not going to pretend that I understand it entirely. I have a total bias against it. All that's fine. You can disagree. I hope you enjoy Lotus Field. I hope you have a great day. But when you compare what the gameplay that this brings to the format and what it has to offer, I think when you sort of assess these other cards over here, you go, you know what? Maybe whatever. Like, I don't mind this. Maybe these are fine. I hate these. Maybe this should go. That's sort of the point in what I'm getting at. Where it's like, I'm not sure these should all be unbanned. I'm not sure these should all be banned. But I think when you compare the power level of some of the things going on here, it's just like, should we reevaluate what we're really doing with the format? Next is Besage. So I've talked about this with Veil of Summer, where it's just, you look at it and you're like, oh yeah, this is a good guy card. It stops the bad guy cards. We're going to disenchant. It's fine. They get a land. But it's like, no, your opponent loses the game, right? Like, you play this, the game ends. You play this, the game ends. Typically, you're just like finishing, you're effectively comboing them. Or, you're disenchanting their thing and you're untapping and you're comboing them. The cost on this is just too low. I think this card's a terrible design. I think it could get banned in Modern too. In the context of all this bullshit and all these combo decks, this card even gets more offensive. Like Wilderness Reclamation. I guess it's a way to check Wilderness Reclamation as well, but like these decks could just play 3 or 4 of this depending on what they're trying to interact with. This card's just miserable. But I don't like these cards. I would be okay with one of them exiting the format. If you get rid of Besage, I think it's a little bit easier to interact with the Lotus Field decks. If you get rid of Lotus Field, well, then maybe Besage is not a big of an issue. But next card we'll talk about. Quantum Riddler's new. So it's really difficult for me to talk about a card that hasn't been broken yet. But if I vote a league with like blue-white spirits, with Essence Flux and with this card, I played it in a lot of different spaces. It's very clearly incredibly powerful. Recently I looked on Moto, it's 150 tickets. People are playing in a lot of formats. There's a lot of things you can do with it. You can put it in Yorion decks. You can blink it after you warp it. You can just play regular games of Magic where you use it like a Think Twice that becomes a 4/6. You just get a lot of cards out of it. But the other card I want to talk about, I guess in conjunction with it, is Up the Beanstalk. And this is something I haven't seen that many people doing, but it is incredibly powerful. I don't know, like, in practice, I've played with decks like this, and my opponents just like play an Unholy Annex and a Fable the Mirror Breaker, and I can't really keep up, and I end up dying so quickly because the Annex is dealing me damage. But I do think that this is a really powerful card advantage engine that could exist alongside things like Expressive Iteration and Unholy Annex and Fable the Mirror Breaker and whatever might be present in the format. I don't think this card should be banned necessarily, but I do sort of want to discuss it alongside these power level outliers because I just think it's such a strong card. Next, Up the Beanstalk. Obviously, Leyline Binding. There's like weird stuff like Tassiger or Murderous Cut. There's so many different ways to trigger this card. Yorion, really big one. But one of the most powerful cards in Pioneer that doesn't see any play. I think that typically you see it in like Niv and Enigmatic. But I wouldn't be surprised if there was a way to build a deck that's similar to Niv, but just has a better mana base. I think Sunspine Leaks really punishes you for playing these multicolor decks. You just end up taking like 5 or 6 damage every time it comes to play. But you can play Sultai. I think Abrupt Decay is pretty good against Unholy Annex, for example. You play Yorion. There's a lot of powerful things you can do. I just think Up the Beanstalk is such a strong card. I think you could maybe make an argument that it is a more powerful card draw spell than Expressive Iteration, but it does require a deck building cost. So I think it's super powerful. I don't think it is as powerful as this card. So we have Treasure Cruise. I don't know how much time I want to spend talking about this card. It seems pretty obvious. I don't really subscribe to the idea that 1 mana draw 3 cards is like the most fun you can have in Magic. It's been discussed that this is the last format where Treasure Cruise is available, but like the experience of like playing a powerful card draw spell, I think there are a lot of ways to mirror that. I don't think Treasure Cruise is like some particularly sacred or interesting thing. The text is pretty straightforward. I think there are other ways to make people feel the joy they feel with Treasure Cruise that are maybe more acceptable in the context of Consider and Opt and Artisan's Talent. I'm not super confident about this. Like, I kind of I think there's a lot of ways to argue for Treasure Cruise. Doesn't see that much play in decks that aren't exactly Phoenix. It's not like it just goes in every single deck. It's not like Mono Red splashes for it or whatever. And it is sort of course corrected by the fact that the fetch lands aren't legal. But like, again, if Treasure Cruise is going to be legal, then I think maybe Uro's fine. Like, they're different. They're both powerful. But I think you could argue Treasure Cruise is more powerful in the decks that are good Treasure Cruise decks, which is basically specifically Phoenix. So yeah, I mean, I think these are kind of comparable, and you could argue for this pile versus this pile. You could argue for bans or unbans. This card's disgusting. I think, like, even if you banned Treasure Cruise, you would probably see people playing blue-red decks with Corey Steelcutter. Maybe no one would play Artisan's Talent in Phoenix anymore, but I would definitely just try to play Phoenix with, like, Dig Through Time. I don't think that if you remove Treasure Cruise from the format, like, the blue-red decks just stop existing in any form. I think they get restructured in a potentially interesting way. I think the people at WotC are pro Treasure Cruise, and it probably will not be getting banned, especially if you consider the metagame. So, yeah, whatever. Next, let's talk about Quintorius really quickly. People always get upset when I talk about this card. It's as simple as 1 card combos suck. They're not fun. They're not interesting. The gameplay is terrible. Is this too good? Probably not. Like, you can just counter it or whatever, or you can just combo kill your opponent before they play this. Okay, that was easy. Greasefang. So, like, I think, like, Greasefang is, like, kind of the perfect toxic card, in my opinion. It's just really unfun. Like, the games where your opponent just does it, it's just not it feels like shit when you can't interact with it and you just die, or maybe they, like, top deck the piece they're missing and you just die. But, like, you know, you could Supreme Verdict, you could blow up the board, Dice to Graveyard Hate, you could Black Leyline them, you could Ghost Vacuum them, you could Nowhere to Run to shrink their thing, you could have a Lightning Strike, you could Pithy Needle the Parhelion. There's a lot of different ways to interact with this card, which is part of why I think it's, like, the perfect toxic card. But it does feel like, in a lot of ways, it's just like a turn 3 kill. It's sort of like a Gorgo's Vengeance-esque thing in Pioneer, which I don't think is the greatest. But if this is going to be like the poster child for toxic combo decks, it's probably fine. If this is like the best deck in the format, which, you know, some of the data indicates it may be one of the best decks, it does do really well. I think it's just the way that the black-white decks are structured, I think, is really good against the mono-red decks because of Shelter by Ghost. But yeah, I mean, it just feels like another Winota. Again, Winota gets to dodge Graveyard Hate and stuff like that, but it's just like, oh yeah, you wanted to play an interesting game, oh, you died, and I'm dead. Yeah, this card kind of sucks, but whatever. Yorion. So, Yorion's weird, because it's a card that I find very fun to play with. It's also a companion that I think is really good for the deck building experience, because it requires you to search out more cards that synergize with the cards that you currently have. So I think the deck building experience around it is really fun. I just take issue with how powerful it is. Like, I don't know why it's so big. I don't know why it blinks an unlimited amount of things. I guess it has flying because it's a Sky Nomad. But like, I don't know. I don't think this card will get banned. It's kind of just, it's banned in Modern, which I don't even know if it should be banned in Modern. There's fetch lands, so there's time things, but there's also cards that cause you to search in Pioneer, I guess. I don't know. Whatever. I wish that they could just remove or rat these cards to not have the companion mechanic. I would rather this thing just gets banned and they print more cards that are like it that you have to put in your main deck. But I will say, like, building 80 card decks is fun. I enjoy it. I enjoy building Lutri decks. I enjoy building Yorion decks. A lot of the other companion cards, I think, just make deck building less fun and less interesting. Um, this one will probably stay legal for a really long time, unless someone breaks it with, like, up the beanstalk pile. I mentioned Scavenger Talent already. I think I talked about this. And then there's Fable and Unholy Annex. I've complained about Fable forever. Most people don't agree with me. It's a fair card, right? Like, I think they like the idea of people playing a Thoughtseize fair deck that isn't, so the format isn't just all combo decks. I think Unholy Annex and Fable and Mirrorbreaker help people do that because they're so powerful. But the gameplay experience behind them, I just think, is pretty dreadful. Like, Fable says, it says discard 2 cards, draw 2 cards. That's a skill test. A lot of times, like, you don't need to play well with these cards to win. They have so much value. They're worth so much that, like, if you have them and your opponent does not, and you are playing a fair game of Magic, you would just win. In the context of, like, red-black being able to beat combo decks, Unholy Annex helps you pressure people by just your mutable to sort of deal 4 damage. And then Fable gives you mana, which means, like, if I Fable, I can loot my hand, I can try to find Shieldred and Thoughtseize, I can use the treasure to give me the 5th mana, I can play the Shieldred, I can Thoughtseize you, now I'm stopping your pour over the pages, they're less effective, I'm taxing your life total, all that stuff. So, it's not the best at, like, threatening combo decks, but it's just a very, very powerful card in the mid-range mirrors, and it does enough to be a proactive card. I think both these cards are just ridiculously powerful. I think both of these cards are probably more powerful than a lot of the cards on this side. But at the same time, they're just, like, fair cards. So I don't know. I don't know what to say about these exactly. I'm not sure my exact opinion, but, like, the gameplay experience, when most of the gameplay experience is sort of like these linear combo decks where if they do the thing and you miss a beat, you immediately die. The gameplay experience of Artisan's Talent, of Fable the Mirrorbreaker, of Unholy Annex, of Treasure Cruise, is sort of the opposite, where, like, if you're not immediately killing your opponent, you just can't win. Like, you can't win on a fair access. You're kind of just waiting for them to beat you. They're not going to beat you immediately. They're not going to combo kill you immediately. They're going to drain you out or beat you down or whatever. Amass monk tokens. Use Artisan's Talent to discard phoenixes. But they're things that, when they're a part of the games, it's pretty easy to very quickly identify who is going to win. Like, a lot of times these things will be played, and you'll just look at your hand and look at the fact that you cannot combo kill your opponent, or you cannot pressure them adequately, and you know you're beat, which is part of why I call these cruel ultimatums, where, like, the swing and impact they have on the game is so dramatic that I think it makes the gameplay experience really, really unfun. I don't think it's fun when you play a game and on the 3rd turn, you can basically conclude who's going to win. I think Pioneer is incredibly good at presenting games like that, where, like, on the 2nd turn, on the 3rd turn, on the 4th turn, either someone has one or it is incredibly clear who's going to win. It's not, like, interesting or like, oh my gosh, what could happen from here? It's like, oh, I'm dead. I'm fucking dead. Whether I'm literally dead because my opponent attacked me with a Parhelion, or I'm just dead because I know I can't pressure my opponent and they have Mutable, Unholy Annex, or whatever, and they Thoughtseize my combo piece or my disenchant or whatever it is. So yeah, these are sort of like fair cards that I think end up making gameplay experiences that I personally do not enjoy. And finally, I don't even know what to call this pile. I guess I would just call this, like, cards that should be in Pioneer. Like, these are the type of things that I sort of like. I actually really don't. This one I'll talk about. Gleeful Demolition. So this is Kadoltha Rebirth. Blow up your artifact, make 3 1/1s. This just goes back to everything I'm saying, where, like, it's very clear that the game is over, right? My opponent plays Gleeful Demolition, they convoke out a 5-drop. I do not have, like, Temporary Lockdown or whatever sweeper in my deck. I don't have the combo to kill them on my 3rd turn or my 4th turn. The game just ends. So, like, I guess the point I want to make quickly, this video is such nonsense, but whatever, is, like, it kind of feels like old Modern, where, like, oh, people just argue there's deck diversity. And then I go to play the games, and I'm like, this sucks. Like, yes, my opponent has played a different deck, but, like, the gameplay experience is, like, I can play No More Lies, I can play Thoughtseize, I can play combo decks. And that's kind of it. Which, to most people, is probably, like, yeah, that's how Magic works. That's the game. and maybe it's just me being old and grumpy and curmudgeony, and maybe it is that simple. Maybe that's just how Magic works. Maybe that's how these formats should work. But I just struggle to have fun in the games, which is kind of part of why, like, maybe at this point in Pioneer, you just argue, like, just have all the stuff be legal. The gameplay experience is not what it is about. It's not really about playing, like, super fun, interesting games. Like, maybe there's 2 moments in whatever the 4 to 6 turns each game lasts where things are interesting. But you just let people do crazy shit. And maybe you just unban all this stuff, because it's like, if you find these other things to be fine, then maybe these other things are fine, or we could sort of work towards a place where we find a balance in between from the card pool. I'm sort of a fan of working towards, you either have a main goal, and the main goal is always going to shift, of like, we want this to be a turn 5 format, or turn 6 format, or we don't want combo decks, or we want a lot of combo decks, or we want 20% combo decks, or you could just try to minimize the ban list, right? I don't think Wizards really subscribes to that. I don't think they want to minimize the ban list. I think it goes back to the point I made earlier of, like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If people aren't complaining a lot, then we're not going to make a lot of changes. And maybe that's where Pioneer is, and none of this matters, and everyone will ignore me. Yeah, finally, this other list. I guess this is just cards I think that should be in Pioneer. Like, Eager comboing doesn't bother me. Scavenger Talent just being played and then you just activate it 2 times and the game sort of eventually ends is really uninteresting. I think Eager's a pretty cool card. And I think it's fine that it combos with 2 Golden Familiars. But I would rather that experience of accessing those things and finding those things be a little bit more complicated than just activate, tap my Witch's Omen or whatever 3 times, and then click the buttons until you're infinitely drained. Nick, this one's controversial. Some people have really hated this card. I think it makes pretty unfun gameplay experience, like I said. You just miss a beat, your opponent has Elf, Nykthos, Kiora, Leyline, whatever bullshit. You just die, but I think that's just kind of how Pioneer's going to be. And in a way, that's how a lot of Eternal formats are going to be. Thoughtseize, this is sort of like the Force of Will or Force of Negation, Solitude-esque card in the format where, like, it's very difficult to interact with people because we don't have 0-mana interaction. So I think something like this probably needs to exist. Hardfire Hero, Monstrous Rage. I'm gonna put Hardfire Hero over here. I like Monstrous Rage. I don't know what I want the red decks to look like in Pioneer exactly. But I kind of miss how they used to look. Maybe those decks just came up short and weren't good enough. I would not mind not having to play games against Hardfire Hero. Like, everyone has experienced what it's like when your opponent goes Hardfire Hero, Manifold Mouse, and, like, maybe you have some creatures to block, but you don't have exactly Fatal Push, and you're just fucking dead. You just know, like, even if they don't have a Monstrous Rage, like, how are you ever blocking? And whenever they do have a Monstrous Rage, you just immediately lose the game. So I think the red decks having, like, Screaming Nemesis, Sunspine Lynx, Monstrous Rage, and then other prowess cards is probably a place where I would be more comfortable. But in total, with Hardfire Hero, Manifold Mouse, and then the rest of the powerful red card they have access to, maybe that's not something I'm completely comfortable with. But I do like Monstrous Rage. Like, it's not the most fun card, but it does seem like a Pioneer level card. Nemesis sucks. I think this is a shit design. It's probably fine for Pioneer. I really hate Lynx. From the context of Pioneer, like, there just shouldn't be cards that punish you for playing a multicolored mana base, because what punishes you for playing a multicolored mana base is the fact that your mana sucks, right? Like, that's the cost. You have to play more shock lands. Your mana's not always going to function. Maybe you're only going to have 2 colors. Maybe you're going to be playing a Sultai deck and you're only going to have blue-black and you can't cast your Abrupt Decay. In the context of, like, I don't think this card needs to be banned, but, like, it just does nothing good for the format. It's just kind of a miserable card. It's a 4-drop. So, like, it is what it is, but this card sucks. Like, it basically just does no good. I think people would argue, well, you gotta punish greedy decks. It's like, no. They punish themselves. That's kind of the point. This is not a format with fetch lands. Your fetch land does not represent 5 colors of Magic. That's not how it works. Monument, this is fine. Like, again, this is what a Pioneer card should look like to me. If you want to argue anti-Greasefang, I think you could do that, but, Dig Through Time. So Dig Through Time's interesting. Inverter aside, there have been points where I was like, if you're going to ban Cruise, you should ban Dig Through Time. I no longer subscribe to that. I think the fact that it costs more mana is enough of a difference maker. And I think if you just ban Cruise, forcing people to downgrade to Dig Through Time is a pretty good solution. Because it is kind of like nerfing Treasure Cruise. Dig Through Time isn't really a card that sees much play across the format. It only really saw play with Inverter. On occasion, it would see play in control decks, but now people would just play like Memory Deluge or Consult the Star Charts. I think this is another argument for Cruise just getting banned, and just if you want to nerf the Phoenix deck, if you want to nerf the format. And it's another card where like it's banned everywhere else, so you could just say like, okay, Cruise is gone, but you can still play Dig Through Time, and that's cool, and it's old, and it's Delve. Karuga, I don't know. I hate Companion. Look at the Hippo. This card's awesome. I think this lands in a really, really good place for Pioneer. I enjoy it. I hate this card. And I think it lands in a good place for Pioneer. I think, to me, this is like, healthier Unholy Annex, where like just busted with Mutavault, but it requires you to play a creature deck and 2 colors, and you have to be blue-black, and yeah, whatever. You know, maybe you can do Omniscient stuff, but again, kind of like Greasefang, it's just like it's weak to Graveyard Hate. Like this is the type of card that I think would maybe be a more healthy combo card to exist. You know, you make your Omniscience or your thing a 1/1. A lot of people are just gonna be like, this card's not good enough. Why are you talking about it? Whatever. Move on. Relic of Legends. So Jeskai Ascendancy is weird to put on the list because no one ever plays this. But Relic does accomplish this thing for like combo decks in Pioneer that I really appreciate that Jeskai Ascendancy does that's similar. That Lotus Field does not do, that Inverter of Truth does not do, which is let you interact with the board. So, like, Unholy Annex is part of why it's powerful, is it's difficult to deal with enchantments. The same is true for Jeskai Ascendancy, the same is true for Relic of Legends. But when it comes to problem solving, when it comes to addressing how am I going to stop a thing in the format, I appreciate that Relic of Legends is a permanent in play that you can deal with. So when you are building your sideboard, you can address it a lot more easily than you can when you're trying to figure out how to beat something like Inverter of Truths or something like Lotus Field. So, yeah, again, this is just kind of like Greasefang. To me, this is sort of the type of thing that you probably want to be your combo deck in a format like Pioneer. I don't know if the same Ascendancy's similar point. I just talked about this to contrast it to the Green Ley line. So, Soul Cauldron. There's VV Cauldron. I've played it in Pioneer. It was really disgusting when I played it. This is another card that checks Uro. And maybe some of the Graveyard Hate decks. Maybe it would be busted in Kethis. Does this work with Kethis? Yes. Powerful card. You know, maybe in 5 years this will have to get banned out of Pioneer. Maybe in 1 year. I don't know. But I think for now, this is the type of thing I would like to see in Pioneer. I think it's kind of interesting, fun to build with. Easily could be broken. Angels, linear creature deck. Not very fun. Another deck that just presents pretty shit gameplay. But I think it's just like almost the perfect Pioneer deck. Really new player friendly, appealing to more casuals. You know, vulnerable, probably healthy for metagame, to be a part of a metagame, easily contested. Like whenever this deck becomes popular, people just start playing blue-white, and then no one plays Angels ever again. So yeah, VV. I don't know. I think that this probably just lands in a good spot for Pioneer. Obviously, we have issues with this in Standard. I would like to see the blue-red decks, and they're already doing this. They're already shifting to Prowess decks instead of Phoenix. I don't know if that's just because people are experimenting. I don't know if it's actually better to play like Dreadhorde Arcanist and VV than playing Phoenix. I kind of doubt that it is. But it would be interesting to see this card work its way through Pioneer. So I don't think this is a card that I have any issues with. Steel Cutter, I could see this moving. Like, it's just such a strong card. Like, it's similar to, like, Fable and Annex. Sometimes you just play fair decks against this, and you're like, how am I supposed to win? Like, I need to be immediately combo killing my opponent. I can't really beat this thing. But, you know, it does, I don't know. It's kind of similar where, like, if you're worried about Abrupt Decay, you can sandbag it, play it, then you get the 1/1. But I mean, this draws a whole card. This gives you a Magda, basically a goblin that makes tokens. I think this requires a little more work. It gets checked by like the rule of law effects, the things that say you can only play one spell a turn. I think this one's probably fine. Artisan's Talent, a lot of my issue I take is just with Treasure Cruise, not this card. I kind of like that the Phoenix deck now has things that are susceptible to Portable Hole, making it a more viable main deck option. But yeah, these cards are just really powerful in the context of Treasure Cruise. And then Kira just sucks. I mean, whatever, I'll get over it. But like, this card, being able to play this card without any creatures in your deck sucks. So that's my video. That's my rant. I don't know what to call this. It's probably way longer than it needed to be, but it's a lot of cards. And this will just be a way to sort of archive my current thoughts on Pioneer, for better or for worse. And just how I sort of see the cards in the format. I don't know what's going to happen with Pioneer. I don't know if it's going to die. I don't know if it's going to magically get support again. I don't know if people are going to fall in love with it. I don't know if people are going to give up on it. I've seen people say nice things about it, and I think that's great. Like, I'm rooting for the format either way, whether they ban stuff, whether they unban stuff, whether they do nothing. I think it's a really fun sandbox to build decks in. Majority speaking, I like the card pool. But this is just discussing my thoughts on some of the things I find frustrating and terms of gameplay experience, overall thoughts on the format, thoughts on the things that are banned, maybe could be unbanned, things, knobs that could be turned. I hope you guys enjoyed. Hopefully it was bearable listening to me ramble. And you know, I made a YouTube video, so that's good too. Hit the like and subscribe button, and I will see you guys in the next one. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're enjoying Magic. Hope you're excited for Avatar. Not stoked that we're getting 2 Universes Beyond sets in a row, to be honest. I really was looking forward to Lorwyn. I thought Spider-Man bumped Lorwyn. And then we were going to get Lorwyn, but instead we're getting the Nickelodeon show, which I've watched, by the way. I watched it recently. I thought it was good. I thought Avatar was good. Whatever. Okay, bye.